Hello, I'm Joseph Kasser, and welcome to this podcast where the AI team does a deep dive into some application of systems thinking.
Hey everyone, welcome back. So today we're doing a deep dive on something I think we can all relate to, rescuing our projects from late deliveries and, budget blowouts.
For sure.
We're looking at a method called TimeLine. And our source material is a document by consultant Niels Malito.
Okay.
And I know what you're all thinking, another project management framework.
Right.
But stick with us on this one, because TimeLine has a few unique twists.
I'm intrigued.
One of the things that really caught my eye was this concept of a fatal date.
Okay.
And it's not as dramatic as it sounds, but it forces you to think differently about deadlines. And really what we're talking about here is kind of shifting away from that traditional add up all the tasks and hope for the best approach to something a lot more strategic.
Absolutely, yeah. The fatal date and timeline is a hard deadline.
Right.
You absolutely cannot miss it. It's about forcing yourself to prioritize what tasks are actually most important based on their value and impact on that date.
Yes.
Yeah.
Less about cramming everything in and more about
Exactly.
what must be achieved. So working backward from that ultimate goal and being really ruthless about what makes the cut. That makes sense to me. But how does TimeLine actually break down the work?
Well, it uses a structure of horizons and delivery cycles to manage the work.
Okay.
So a horizon is about 10 weeks long, and each horizon is further divided into delivery cycles of two weeks or less.
Interesting.
Yeah, the idea is to have these shorter, more manageable chunks of work that allow for constant feedback and adjustments along the way.
I'm seeing a theme here of breaking things down and iterating.
Absolutely.
Is that a fair assessment?
You're spot on. TimeLine acknowledges that project requirements and priorities can change. So these shorter cycles allow you to adapt and stay on track toward that fatal date. Each delivery cycle is kind of like a mini checkpoint where you assess progress, reevaluate priorities, and you can make any necessary course corrections. It's much more dynamic than the traditional waterfall approach.
That makes a lot of sense. Instead of blindly following a plan set in stone, you're constantly evaluating and adapting. It sounds like a more realistic way to manage the inevitable curveballs that come with any project.
Exactly. And even within those delivery cycles, you have even smaller units called task cycles, which are basically weekly sprints focused on specific tasks. So this granular level of planning ensures that everyone on the team knows their priorities, and it helps them to work in a way that optimizes the overall flow of the project.
And speaking of granular, I noticed Malito uses these terms, weeks of work, or WOW, and velocity.
Right.
Those sound pretty technical. Can you break those down for us a little bit?
Sure. Weeks of work is simply a measure of how much effort a task requires. And it's expressed in, weeks.
Makes sense.
Velocity, on the other hand, measures how much work a team can actually complete in a given time period, usually also expressed in weeks.
So, wow, helps you estimate how long a task should take.
Yeah.
And velocity tracks how long it actually takes.
Yeah.
Am I getting that right?
You got it. And TimeLine uses these metrics to help you calibrate your project as you go. Calibration is the process of comparing planned progress with actual progress. This helps you to identify potential delays early on and make necessary adjustments to stay on schedule.
So it sounds like TimeLine is all about staying ahead of the game and preventing those last-minute scrambles.
Exactly.
Malito also talks about common pitfalls that can throw a project off course.
For sure.
What are some of those?
Well, one of the biggest is the temptation to just throw more people at delayed project. It seems intuitive, right?
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
On the surface.
But as Fred Brooks famously pointed out, in the mythical man month, adding people to a late project often backfired.
I've definitely been in situations where more people just meant more confusion.
It's a classic case of too many cooks in the kitchen. Adding people can lead to communication overhead, training needs, and increased complexity, which can actually slow things down further.
So TimeLine would caution against that knee-jerk reaction to just add more bodies to the problem.
Exactly.
What other deceptive options does it address?
Well, there's the hope for the best strategy, which rarely works out.
Right.
Then there's the tendency to push people to work overtime, which can lead to burnout and decreased quality.
Yeah.
And of course, There's the just extend the deadline solution, which often just kicks the can down the road.
So basically, all the classic ways we try to avoid making tough decisions. It seems like TimeLine is pushing for a more proactive and, dare I say, honest approach to project management.
Absolutely. Instead of resorting to those Band-Aid solutions, TimeLine encourages you to face the reality of the situation and make strategic choices.
And one of the most intriguing concepts that Melito puts forward is this idea of saving time by doing less. I'm definitely curious to hear more about that. But first, we need to take a quick break. We'll be right back to dive deeper into the power of saying no in project management.
All right, so we talked about those pitfalls of traditional project management and how TimeLine offers a more proactive approach. But I'm still kind of stuck on this idea of saving time by doing less. It sounds almost counterintuitive in the world of project management.
It is. It is counterintuitive, and that's why it's so powerful. It's about recognizing that not all work is created equal. Some tasks have a much higher impact on achieving that fatal date than others. And TimeLine really forces you to make tough choices and prioritize the work that truly matters.
So it's not about blindly cutting corners, but about strategically deciding what not to do.
It starts with what Melito calls not doing the superfluous.
And this means ruthlessly scrutinizing every requirement, every feature, and every task, and asking, is this truly essential to reach the project's goal by the fatal date?
I can imagine those conversations with stakeholders could get a little tense. How does TimeLine help navigate?
Well, those potentially difficult discussions, it provides a framework for having those conversations based on data and a shared understanding of priorities. When you have a clear fatal date and a transparent system for tracking progress, it becomes easier to explain the trade-offs and justify why certain things need to be deprioritized or even eliminated.
It makes sense. So it's about shifting the focus from doing everything to doing the right thing.
Exactly.
And having the data to back up those decisions.
Absolutely. And it's not just about cutting things out. TimeLine also emphasizes efficiency in how and when you do the work.
So even the tasks that make the cut need to be scrutinized for efficiency.
Absolutely. TimeLine encourages teams to constantly evaluate their processes, their tools, and even the order in which tasks are completed. The goal here is to streamline the workflow and avoid any wasted effort that could delay progress toward that fatal date. For example, Figure 6 in Melito's document shows how a slight delay in one task can cascade through a project and cause significant delays overall if the task order isn't optimized.
It's like that old saying, measure twice, cut once. Taking the time to plan and prioritize carefully up front can ultimately save significant time and headaches down the line.
For sure.
And speaking of planning, accurate estimation is crucial for any project, but it can also be a real challenge. How does TimeLine address this?
TimeLine encourages a shift from optimistic to realistic estimates. It promotes honesty and accountability, empowering individuals to provide accurate assessments of the time required to complete their tasks.
And how do those task cycles play into this? I imagine those short deadlines would provide some valuable feedback for improving estimations.
Absolutely. Those weekly deadlines with task cycles create a feedback loop that helps people refine their estimation skills over time. They get constant practice in estimating, executing, and then comparing their estimates with reality.
It sounds like a very practical way to improve those all-important estimation skills.
It is.
But what about those situations where you need a quick estimate? Without getting bogged down in too much detail, does TimeLine offer any guidance there?
It does. Melito introduces this concept of what he calls Earth order estimations, which are essentially quick, rough estimates based on readily available information. They're not meant to be perfect, but they can be very useful for making quick decisions without getting paralyzed by analysis.
So kind of like a back-of-the-envelope calculation.
Exactly, to get a sense of the order of magnitude. Melito even provides an example of using a dearth order estimation to quickly assess the cost of delaying a product launch. And it highlights how even a rough estimate can provide valuable insights for strategic decision-making.
Okay, that makes sense. But estimations aren't always a solo activity, right?
Often you need to get input from multiple people, especially when you have a team working on a project. Does TimeLine offer any strategies?
It does. For collaborative estimation, TimeLine advocates for a technique called Simple Delphi. To achieve consensus on estimates within a team, it involves gathering the people who will actually be doing the work and facilitating a discussion to reach agreement on the estimated effort for each task.
So it's not just about averaging everyone's individual estimates. It's
about having a conversation to understand the reasoning behind those estimates and arriving at a shared understanding.
Exactly.
The focus is on open dialogue and collective wisdom rather than mathematical averaging.
I see.
This process also helps uncover potential risks or dependencies that individual estimators might have overlooked.
That makes sense.
While Malito acknowledges the value of specialized estimation tools,
he also cautions against over-relying on them, especially when they obscure the underlying data and decision-making process.
So it's about striking that balance between utilizing helpful tools and maintaining a clear understanding of the principles behind your estimations.
Exactly.
You don't want to become overly dependent on black box algorithms that you don't fully understand.
The goal is to develop sound estimation practices that are integrated into that timeline process, providing reliable data for planning, prioritization, and calibration. Ultimately, TimeLine emphasizes that estimation is not a one-time event, but a continuous process of refinement and learning.
That makes a lot of sense. We've covered a lot of ground here, from horizons and delivery cycles to task cycles, calibration, and estimation. TimeLine seems to offer a comprehensive framework for managing projects more effectively.
It does.
What are the real tangible benefits that this approach promises to deliver?
Well, at its core, TimeLine is designed to help you deliver the most valuable work on time, every time. By focusing on that fatal date, it does this by providing early detection of potential delays, enabling teams to make course corrections before it's too late.
So it's like the Interism having a built-in early warning system.
Exactly, to help you avoid those project management nightmares. But it's not just about avoiding problems, it's about empowering teams to deliver their best work consistently.
Ruthlessly prioritizing, eliminating the superfluous, and continuously adapting to changing circumstances. It's about focusing on what truly matters and making sure that those essential tasks are completed on time.
Precisely. TimeLine encourages continuous improvement through calibration and learning, fostering a culture of data-driven decision-making and a relentless focus on delivering real results.
And it's all about increasing transparency and control over the project, giving everyone involved a clear understanding of the goals, the priorities, and the progress.
Right. And while Malito doesn't explicitly use the term agile, many of the principles underlying TimeLine align with agile methodologies, emphasizing flexibility, iteration, and continuous feedback.
So TimeLine is not just a rigid set of rules, but a flexible framework.
Exactly. That can be adapted to various project types and contexts. It's about embracing a mindset of proactive planning, prioritization, and a willingness to challenge assumptions, all with the ultimate goal of achieving project success.
So it sounds like TimeLine really does give us a robust toolkit for not just managing projects, but fundamentally changing.
It does. And, you know, one of the things that really resonates with me is this emphasis on proactively choosing what not to do. It seems so counterintuitive, but it's a game changer for efficiency and focus.
It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of a new project. And want to say yes to everything. But TimeLine really forces us to pause and assess the true value of each task. And be willing to say no.
To those that don't align with the fatal date objective. It's not a one-time decision either. It's an ongoing process of evaluation throughout the project. TimeLine empowers you to constantly reevaluate those priorities and let go of anything that's no longer essential.
So embracing that less is more philosophy.
Exactly, for maximum impact.
Makes you wonder, what are WE clinging to in our own work that could be considered superfluous? What could we eliminate to free up time and energy for what truly matters?
That's a great question. That's the question I want to leave you with today. If proactively choosing what not to do is so crucial for project success, what practices in your field might be considered superfluous and could be eliminated?
That's a great challenge for us all to consider. Maybe certain meetings, reports, or approval processes that could be streamlined or even eliminated.
And remember, This isn't about sacrificing quality. It's about being deliberate and strategic. If you're interested in exploring TimeLine further, Malato's document is packed with practical guidance and detailed explanations. We've included links to his website and other resources in the show notes.
And we'd love to hear your thoughts on TimeLine. Share your experiences, your aha moments, or any questions you have in the comments below. And maybe your insights will inspire a future deep dive.
Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep challenging those assumptions.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world.
I hope you enjoyed today's deep dive. If you'd like to discuss any of the questions or anything that you heard in the podcast, or would like the team to do a deep dive into a different topic, please join the LinkedIn group and let me know. I look forward to providing you with many more deep dives into the applications of systems thinking. Take care.